Hi, friends. This is Dr. Arpita Gupta Dipalma, and you're listening to my podcast, From Pissed Off to Poised. This show is for busy women physicians and professionals just like you who are ready to take control of their emotions while learning how to excel in juggling all the things they are responsible for in life. It's for overextended mamas who are trying to figure out how to work smarter, not harder. It's for multitasking women who are tired of playing the role of the angry and resentful air traffic controller, who simply want to learn how to create a life that is more calm, intentional, and joyful for themselves. My goal is to help you learn how to eliminate the overwhelm and maintain your composure in high-stress situations that you face with the demands in your day-to-day life. Because I get you guys, this was totally me. You are not alone. I invite you to embark on your journey of transformation with me. Enjoy the listen. Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of From Pissed Off to Poised. I am super excited today to have my bestie from residency on with me, Dr. Melissa Parsons. Melissa and I had the lovely experience of doing our very, very first rotation together when we were tackling renal, endo, and cardio as one unit on the floor at Nationwide Children's back in, circa 1999. It's crazy that we have known each other for that long, but I thought it would be lovely to have Melissa on the show because she is the one who introduced me to the world of coaching and what it was about after I thought she was a little bit crazy for doing it herself. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But before I dive in too much, I want to say hello, Melissa. Thank you for being on the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. So much fun to do this and having our paths cross in different areas of life so we can still go to conferences together.
So many paths crossing. Yes. And intentionally keeping our friendship strong.
Oh, yeah, totally. I think you are one of my favorite references to you can have days, weeks, sometimes months even pass and not communicate and then pick right back up. So there's just a few people in the world that I feel like I can do that with. So it's always nice to have that. Yeah.
Same.
So Miss Melissa and I, we actually, like I said, we met in residency and, went through all of our training together. And honestly, the first, up until 2020 for me, 17 or 18 for you, before we started making some changes in our life. And prior to those changes, life really was very much so needing and wanting to have control over things, having this desire and want to have control in order to feel like we could manage everybody else and ourselves and keep everything in check so that things would be good and happy and working well for us. And so what I want to focus on today's episode is this need for control and how we both actually suffered from this. And I still occasionally do suffer from it. I'm sure Melissa has areas of it pop up in her life as well, because we're never perfect in what we're trying to, combat or change. But I thought she would be a lovely person to start to have on to talk about how being a control enthusiast, as she says, doesn't always serve us. So let's just start there, Melissa. Tell me about your control as a survival skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, of course, now we know it was the illusion of control that we had. We never really had control over much of anything other than ourselves. And I think that you alluded to this. The reason that we felt like we needed to have control was so that we could feel safe. Mm-hmm. And I forget who said this. I'm terrible at remembering, but I always want to say that it wasn't me who said it. But it was something, and I'm going to mar the quote, of course, but something along the lines of, you never had control, dear. All you actually had was anxiety. And, trying to control other people in our lives. For me, it was mostly my husband, my children, my mom, my sister, the closest people to me. And then, of course, at work, trying to control how families acted, how the nurses were acting, how my other partners were acting, that type of thing. And gosh, the relief and the freedom that comes when you recognize that actually the only person that we have control over is ourselves and how we think, feel, and act in the world. And, it's kind of the best news ever because it's only one person that you have to control, and you can kind of put down the marionette strings that were actually never attached to the people that we were trying to control, and just concentrate on what makes us have meaning and purpose and joy and contentment and all of those types of things that, we're continually seeking. And I would say, of course, this is a work in progress. And there are days where I feel like, oh my goodness, I'm back to square one. I'm back to trying to control John, my husband. He would say, he would never call me a recovered control
I was
enthusiast.
very careful with my words too.
Yeah, it is definitely recovering. And, one of the big things that you talk about is just the awareness that, oh, this is what I'm trying to do. This is why I feel so terrible, because I'm trying to control people who aren't me. And, just having that awareness so that you can bring yourself back to center and figure out what it is you actually need to feel safe, if it's not for everyone else in the world to do exactly what we think they should do.
I think it's interesting because when you were listing like the people that you felt like you needed to have control over, I think back too for me, and it's primarily the people that we care about the most, right? If you think about it, it's your family members, it's your friends, maybe some coworkers. And I think for me personally, that need for control was my way. It's kind of like, what do you call those border collie dogs that they want to herd their people? So it's like the same thing where we are trying to control what is happening in their life or what they're doing because we think we know what's best for them in order for them to be happy. And that is really so counterintuitive because nobody knows what will make you happy other than yourself, right?
Right.
And so that I think was a big piece of me noticing that a lot of it is fear of my idea of what I think will make them happy not happening for them, and then they're being unhappy. So that was an area of why that control was popping up, the need for the control. Because honestly, if I didn't really care about you, I don't give a shit what you're doing, right? And that's why we didn't really have that need for control for people that I don't have that interaction with as intensely. And I
Right.
don't want that to be taken like, okay, if I don't want to control you, that means I don't give a shit about you. I think now what's happened is kind of having the understanding that I'm never going to be able to control what other people do. And so I'm going to allow them to live the life the way they're living it so that I can also be at peace. What's the air quotes for? She air quoted me.
Like allow them, right? Like we're letting them live their own lives as if we have any control or say.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
And
right.
it's interesting because, and you might not agree with this, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. The reason that we're trying to make them happy is so that we can be happy and be at peace.
Right, right. If they're doing it this way and they're happy and things will be perfect for them this way, then we will feel good. And I do think there's a couple of caveats because this is, I think, primarily with kids that we think that if they do this in their life, if they do this career, or if they show up this way, then they're going to be happy down the road. And maybe it's a little bit cultural as well. That, like, I know for us, a lot of the brainwashing is you need to show up a certain way in your educational timeline so that you can become a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, and then you will be able to provide for yourself. Life will be easy. You will be happy, blah, blah, blah. And that is so far from the truth, right? There's no guarantee for any of that. And so starting to realize that you actually might be completely miserable and unhappy doing those things and giving people the freedom to do what they want is what is so freeing. So,
yeah, amazing. Which is why Sweet Nick is going to eventually own a fishing company down in South Carolina.
yeah, he probably will. He probably will. We'll probably have a second house down there and might end up move down there. Who knows what will happen?
I love it.
Do you have a time where you first noticed where your need to control other people was actually like working against you?
I mean, I think it was when I first started getting coached myself. So yeah, back in 2018, one of the things that my coach continually had me ask myself is, what is mine to do in this situation? And lots of times there was nothing that was actually mine to do in the situation. And sometimes there was something, that was mine. And I could take ownership of that and then, give quote unquote ownership back to the person who's actually was. So yeah, I would say that was one of the first things that I worked on with my one-on-one coach. Perfectionism being the first thing, control enthusiasm. She and I coined that term for me because I was calling myself a control freak. And as part of the coaching, I was learning to be kinder to myself. So we decided on control enthusiast instead of control freak.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all of the people pleasing that I was doing, to try to make it so that I would be everyone's favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think that's interesting that you said that the perfectionism and the control enthusiasm. For me, when I think back, it actually goes back to also getting coached by one of my first coaches one-on-one. And I would think about, she taught me about picking my discomfort. And I think that's when the concept really started to evolve for me, because I was choosing to be so unhappy, trying to control the way that certain employees were showing up. And it just had to be done this way. Otherwise, it was not going to be correct or right, or would be opening us up for liability. And in doing so, I was honestly driving people away. Like, people did not want to work in our practice. And so then my other angst and pain point was constantly having to replace people. Most impactfully for me is the practice manager who was doing my work, so I wouldn't have to be there. And so she was like, choose your discomfort. Do you want to be the one that's constantly controlling and micromanaging and having to have it your way? Or do you want to constantly be replacing this person and having to go back in yourself and doing it yourself and blah, blah, blah. And so that was like the first eye-opening thing for me, that, okay, this is causing me so much pain, and I don't even realize how the need for control is totally counterintuitive to actually helping me. And so that's how it then trickled down into other areas, like even with the kids, like, you have to wear your coat, you have to wear this, you have to do that, you have to, like, you're going, and just letting all of that go as you're laughing at me. I mean, you don't want them freezing their asses off, but I'm like, if you want to wear shorts in 20-degree weather outside, no coat and a sweatshirt, go for it, buddy. Just have fun with that. Poor Nick.
I'm just recalling when we were at a PEDS conference. It was in 2018. You dragged me to this terrible pediatric conference in Arizona. We had fun, but it was the last PEDS conference that I went to.
Me too.
And that can't be right. It was some conference that we were at.
I think it was in Seattle.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. A couple years prior, because the kids were little. And you were like micromanaging which socks Michael put on them from across the country. Like, he literally is in Virginia on the total east side of the country. We are in Seattle, the total west side of the country, thousands of miles away. And it fucking mattered to you what socks the kids were wearing. I was like, what is going on?
I mean, it's crazy how it like seeps into every little aspect of your life, right? And you're just like, oh, I don't really give a shit. Just put on, if you don't want to wear socks, fine, but I'm not going to buy them when we're out there later. It's just, I feel like you really literally do not recognize how it starts to like infiltrate into your entire
everything
life. Yeah. So,
well, and I think, both of us being pediatricians, both of us being moms too, I was going to go one direction. So I have two things to say about this. First, I think those of us who are pediatricians, who are moms, hold ourselves to this freaking ridiculously high standard of like being a great mom and being an example in society. And like, if people are listening to my advice, if my kids aren't out there wearing socks, then, it's all hell's going to break loose. Right. And nobody's going to.
Yeah. What type of example are we setting? We're freaking pediatricians, for God's sake. Right.
Right. Exactly. Which is total bullshit. Like, I just was coaching one of my pediatric clients on this yesterday. Like, no, we did not undergo any rotations in our pediatric residency training that taught us to somehow be better parents. Like, this is bullshit. We can let it go. And then I think the other thing is, if we don't let them make these mistakes, quote unquote, when they're younger, and they don't wear their coat and they freeze and that type of thing, it doesn't give them a chance to learn, oh, if it's 20 degrees outside, I probably should throw on some pants and bring my coat. Like, it doesn't give them a chance to make the mistake so that they can learn from it. And I do think that, we were conditioned prior to being coaches and getting coaching and that type of thing to think that mistakes were not acceptable. And now, of course, we know that, mistakes are the way that you learn, and mistakes are, the most successful people have a huge pile of failures and mistakes behind them. So,
and why not have those mistakes and failures while the stakes are lower, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not going to kill us. If anything, it's going to teach us earlier on so that we do have more of what we're wanting to achieve in our life. So it takes a while. I think the reason it's so hard to let go is because we feel like we are not safe, in a sense, that we are not doing our best as moms or pediatricians or parents or whatever, that we're not maximizing our ability to keep people in their best space or safest space. And then that is a reflection on us. So kind of letting go of that shitty thought pattern of what that means is super important, because no matter what you do, even if they do what you say, the outcome might not be what you're expecting or thinking it's going to be. So I think it's kind of interesting to notice that need for control, how it shows up. And I remember even with friends, for me, again, going back to the need showing up for people that you care about the most, because of the desire to make sure they have their best outcomes as well, and so controlling how people show up for friendships, even for me, I noticed before it would be always somehow would be turned around into how it would also impact me. And so now rather it's let them do that. Let them do this. It really has nothing to do with me. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to control what I can do in this scenario and how I want to show up and what I want, how much time I want to give, et cetera, I'm capable of giving. It impacts you in various arenas of your life, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's not like we only want control in one area. We think we need to have control of everything.
Everywhere.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So how have you noticed in your life where control has impacted your relationship with others, maybe coworkers or your kids, before you started to make changes? What did you notice?
I mean, I think that people can tell when you are not exactly happy with how they're acting and you think that they should be acting in a different way. And even if you're not outright saying it to them, they can sense when you're not meeting them where they are, where you're thinking that they should be further along or farther behind or whatever. So what I think it has done for me, and I've heard the boys and John say this in different ways, but I think that just the best way that I know to love someone is to love them for exactly who they are, for all of the amazing things about them and all of the things that are less than amazing, like
shitty.
Just loving every little bit of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. No matter what. And it feels so much better than trying to control.
At least is that push-pull, that almost that tension, that the lack of it being relaxed, and I think the other kind of, it seems counterintuitive, but when we want to have this control and we are exhibiting this need for control with these people, that connection, we think that that's going to make that connection stronger. And
Mhm.
it actually, I think it really does the opposite
Oh, yeah. It's a total disconnector. Yeah.
completely. Whereas when you can actually let go a little bit and trust and have faith and be a safe space for them to land and come back to you, that's actually what does create and build more of a connection. So, and
Mhm.
I've 100% noticed this change even with our kids as we started shifting the way we approached like any issues or conflicts with them, just being able to say, let it be, let them be, and we're here to support and love regardless. It makes them
Mhm.
want to come back more because they
Mhm.
don't feel on guard per se.
Mhm. Well, yeah. And I mean, I think that, one of the things that I've learned that has led me to have beautiful conversations and, getting to know the kids on a much deeper level is, of course, they still call me and text me when they have a problem or when things aren't peachy in their life. And instead of me going in with, one of my stress responses used to be, I need to fix this for
Mhm.
them.
Oh, yeah.
And instead of that, I say to them, are you calling or are you telling me this because you just want to vent and you just want me to know what's going on in your life? Amazing. Or are you wanting some of my help? Are you wanting some guidance? What is it that you're looking for? And I think 99% of the time, what they are looking for is just to vent and just to tell me.
Hmm.
And, it's my job. What I can control is how I show up in that situation. And of course, after I listen to them vent and that type of thing, I might need to do something for my nervous system so that I can be calm and, I can tell myself it's going to be okay. We're safe, that type of thing. But it's not my job unless they ask me, which they do sometimes, but it's pretty rare. It's not my job to help them regulate their nervous system and to help them solve the problem or help them come up with a solution, which is freeing. And like they actually get to be adults and make decisions and have consequences. They may be amazing consequences, they may be tough ones, but they are theirs and they are not mine.
Yeah. I think one of the most noticeable, I guess, easiest ways to start doing this is to start small, I think, because it's so
Mhm.
hard to just say, I'm going to let it go. Everything's going to be swell. And I mean, it's just, it feels very scary and
Mhm.
unrealistic. And I think, especially for me, it was with the kids. Like, how do I loosen the grip a little bit without making myself feel sick to my stomach constantly that I have no control. And so one of the things that I suggest is like looking at where do you feel that you had to absolutely have control in their lives? Where do you see yourself doing this?
Mhm.
And maybe pick one area that you can just kind of let go of
Mhm.
and see what happens.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is not something that I developed overnight with them.
Oh,
It
yeah,
was more
totally.
like, oh, their room's a mess. Instead of me suggesting, different ways that they can clean their room or going in and cleaning it for them, oh, I can shut the door. Like I
Exactly.
don't need to I don't
Exactly.
need to look at it. Like
Yeah, no,
that
no, no.
was the
We
the
we know,
first.
Melissa, that you're not amazingly perfect and just snap your fingers and it happened overnight.
But some people might get that impression. They might think that it was that, this
Yeah,
has been what,
years.
6, 7 years in the making.
Yeah, and it's a
So,
continual process, but that is literally how I think we were able to start doing this is that you just
mhm,
take one or two small areas, maybe an area that you, of all the list of things that you feel have to be done perfectly and in your way, just let go of the least important one of all of them. And that
right,
also might be so hard for people to pick. So then you're just screwed. You just got to pick one and take the leap. But I think,
right.
that's how you start this process because what happens is when you do that, you're giving yourself the ability to see that it's not as scary or as bad as your brain is going to make it out to be. Like, not
Mhm,
going to blow up in your face. And
mhm,
honestly, even if it does, that's where you kind of see some of the magic of how you actually work through it, how you fix it. And it's not
mm,
really even that bad when you can do that,
right.
right? There's always learning there.
Right. Well, what I always tell my people is, if you decide to let go of control in an area, you can always go back and change your mind and say, oh no, I actually want to control this or try to. I've never met anyone yet who has done that, but just I think having that permission of like, you're making this decision today. It doesn't have to be a lifelong decision. You can change your mind at any time and, pick up the reins again and hold tightly. But once people do start, making the smaller changes and see that it's safe, then they're like, okay, now let's try another one, or let's try something bigger or closer to home, or,
Yeah. Yeah.
one of those types of things. So,
And the funny thing is, I think when you do that, like for me, immediately my brain goes back to the year of Serena applying for colleges. And my brain goes back to how it used to be with me and my work in the office. And it's like, there's no fucking way I'm going back to that. Right. And so we're in so much pain while we're in this mode of having to have control and we don't even realize it, or maybe we do and we just can't release it. That once we start to evolve and get to this point where we're not needing that control anymore, we can let things go. We literally will go kicking and screaming back to go back to that place. Like you don't want to go there because you start to recognize how miserable you were when you were in that space.
How bad it is on your health and your body and all those things. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it's been a game changer, a complete game changer. And we're not perfect. I still definitely have to have certain things a certain way. And that's how I feel safe and cozy. And, you get to pick that. But noticing when you have a few areas of that in your life versus it being all consuming in your life, I think is very, very important so that you can start to decide if you want to make some changes. So,
yeah. Yes, that's so good. I love it.
Anything else you want to share? Any tips like where you think people should start, or any funny freaking stories of control backfiring in your face?
Oh my gosh. One thing I do want to share is a quote that I heard on the We Can Do Hard Things podcast. I think it was Martha Beck who said that any unsolicited advice that you give to anyone is criticism.
Yes, I remember hearing that too somewhere.
And, I think that at first when I heard that, I was like, oh, that is harsh. But then when you think about it, like any unsolicited advice that you give, criticism, which is why I love what I do, because I can give solicited advice. People pay me for, and it's not even that they pay me for my advice. It's they pay me to ask them the questions to make it so that they can find the answers for themselves. Right.
Funny.
But, even thinking about like suggesting that somebody find a coach or suggesting coaching might be the right thing for you. People have to come to it on their own in order for it to be effective and that type of thing. So I think about that a lot with the kids. I try to think about it with John, but man, does he need my unsolicited advice sometimes. But, I think you and I are pretty good examples of people being willing to go first in our families in terms of making changes and, giving permission for people to ask for help and to need assistance and, to kind of let go of some of that stuff. So yeah, I was just called to say that for some reason.
There's another quote too there by Pema Chodron that I love to give to my clients because it really talks about this need for things to be perfect. And that's where I feel like this need for control comes from, is that we want things to be a certain way so that life will be easy and that life will be, without any hitches or glitches. And so that we can kind of just keep coasting along. And the reality is, until we can relax into the understanding that that's never going to happen, we're never going to relax. And that's what she talks about in this quote. I'll put it in the show notes as well, because it was so, just the words that she used to relay how this works was so enlightening, because you're like, oh yeah, we're so caught up in the push and pull of trying to make it be a certain way that we're totally losing out on the entire journey in terms of being in angst. And when we can just recognize that, I think one of the favorite parts of what she wrote is when somebody spills tomato juice on your white suit. I'm like, yeah, no shit, that shit's going to happen. Like, you can relax into the fact that shit's going to happen and you're going to figure it out. that is much more, for me, I guess, an easier way to live life than to be
Mhm.
worried constantly about what's going to happen if I don't have my finger on it.
Yeah, just thinking about how clenched,
Hmm.
and like we used to be,
Yes.
and some of us on this call more than others.
Hey, I would
But
say we're good, even clenching now, but
now, yes, I would say.
now.
So, just like thinking about how it wasn't even really possible to take a deep breath,
Yeah. I
right?
think one of my clients, one of our friends, talks about that when she first noticed, it was Sonia. She was actually on episode 2 or 3 of this, where we're talking about awareness, where she
Mm,
started to realize that she was going through her day seeing patients not even breathing, right?
mhm.
That we don't even take full breaths because we're so clenched about how it has to be, how it needs to be. And that just even having awareness of that, that was her way of first noticing and saying, okay, I need to start to make a little bit of a shift here. It's crazy how it shows up. So,
Yeah, so good. I
yeah.
love Sonia. Hi, Sonia.
Hi, Sonia. All right, my dear. Well, thank you for this.
Yeah, you're so
From
welcome. I hope
two,
it's helpful to people.
yeah, two control enthusiasts. So I had Miss Melissa on here talking about how she taught me how to lose control.
Yeah.
But tell the audience how they can find you and learn about you.
Yeah, I have a podcast also. It's called Your Favorite You. I have a website, melissaparsonscoaching.com. You can find me on Facebook, Melissa Parsons Coaching, same on LinkedIn. And then on Instagram, I am Coach Melissa Parsons MD. So those are all the places that I hang out and drop my wisdom on people.
Yes. Love it. Well, thank you. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
All right, guys, we will see you next week. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of From Pissed Off to Poised. Remember, transformation is a journey, not a destination. So enjoy the ride. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review From Pissed Off to Poised on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback supports my mission to get this podcast out to help other women physicians and professionals like you on their path to creating a more peaceful life with more intention and more joy. I enjoy reading every message I get with your input and feedback on my journey, so keep them coming. And if you have a friend who might enjoy the listen, please share this episode and share with them. Lastly, if you want to learn more about my coaching programs and course offerings, check out my website at www.thoughtworkmd.com. Feel free to reach out to me to learn more about investing in yourself through one-to-one coaching so you can start living the life you've always wanted. This show is for general educational and entertainment purposes only. Life coaching is not a substitute for therapy or medical treatment.